Now, this is really important. I was reading to you, my dear listeners, the report on NBC News, the science part of their website, about Stephen Hawking's lecture at Caltech 2 nights ago. And he's a great physicist. And he believes that the best explanation for how everything came about is multiple universes created out of nothing. Please understand the two unbelievable leaps of faith that this physicist is making. One, something came from nothing, for which we have no evidence at all, no empirical evidence that something ever comes from nothing. Number two, that there are multiple universes for which we have zero, not a little, not a tiny, teensy bit, zero evidence. There is none. But they are so anti the idea of God and anti-religion that they are more willing to accept multiple universes for which we have no evidence, and creation from nothing, which never happens, then maybe there's a creator outside of nature. That's how annoying. Now listen, remember I said to you that he quoted Pope John Paul II admonishing the scientific establishment against studying the moment of creation, and he made the joke, I was glad not to be thrown into an inquisition. Well, one of my great researchers, my wife, dug up the quote. Okay? Here it is. John Paul II on studying the origins of the universe. Quote, any scientific hypothesis on the origin of the world, such as the hypothesis of a primitive atom from which derived the whole of the physical universe, leaves open the problem concerning the universe's beginning. Science cannot of itself solve the question. There is needed that human knowledge that rises above physics and astrophysics, and which is called metaphysics. There is needed above all the knowledge that comes from God's revelation. Would you say that that's a bit more sophisticated than the way in which Stephen Hawking dismissed John Paul II's views on science? This is typical of what happens. We are lampooned and then attacked on the lampoon. That's what has happened. The arrogance of saying, it is one thing for science to say, science explains everything within nature. I have no issue with that. Most of you are alive thanks to scientific discovery. I'm probably one of them. Just any of us have taken an antibiotic for a bad infection. We probably would have died in the past. I love science. And not only for that reason, just because I love learning. But science can't explain what science can't explain. Science can't explain why. It explains how. And it can't explain the how of the origin. All you need to acknowledge that is not any knock on science, but humility. You need, and that there is an arrogance on the part of not just scientists, but atheists in general. I don't mean agnostics, I don't mean questioners, I don't mean people who have difficulty reconciling suffering with a good God. I have that difficulty too. That's a separate issue entirely. But all you need is intellectual humility to understand science can't explain everything. Science can explain what is scientific. So of course it can't explain why there was a Big Bang. Of course it can't. It can't explain something from nothing. But once you say that, you are implying that there is a creator, and for whatever emotional or psychological reason they